Hey everybody, welcome to WaterBear, and today we are broadcasting asking the very important question: when is the best time to release your album? Now, releasing an album is kind of hardwired into us musicians because it feels like we're releasing a substantial body of work. But these days, there's a few things to be aware of, and I think the worst thing to do is to put it out too quickly. The problem is, if you put your record out on a Monday, by the time it's Tuesday, it's already an old record, and if nobody's paid any attention to it, you've kind of lost that buzz, and you've lost this amazing opportunity to be a new band. All the time you're previous to putting your first album out, you're a new band and there's lots of opportunities for new bands. That all stops when this album comes out and suddenly you are just another band that's been around the block a little bit. So we've got to ask ourselves, why would we put an album out? And it's got to be part of an overarching strategy to have a long-term career, and it's got to be about building that audience so you've got more people to play to live, more people to buy your t-shirts, and more people to buy your record, whatever form they want to digest it in. So this is a little bit like this, okay? This is a plug and it's attached to a heater. So this is your band and this is your campaign, and you've got to plug it into something, otherwise you're just left with this and it's not working because it's not plugged in. So you need to find your scene and plug it into it, and that requires a little bit of preparation. So what we're going to do today is think about the timing, then I'm going to give you a checklist and a plan for 12 months leading up to putting a record out. And if you follow that, shouldn't go too far wrong. So if we approach this in a sensible way, we're going to have a plan that's realistic and achievable, and we'll make it happen. And I always say this, but if you haven't got that plan, you're just kind of left with a pipe dream, and this is too important to do that. So let's get rid of that. Let's put it all on a bit of paper, make it work, make some music, go out there and build an audience and start a career. Okay, so number one on our plan is to have a plan. We get that, we're going to do that. And now 12 to 24 months is an interesting kind of time period, because it's going to take you 12 months to put the building blocks and the foundations in place to release an album effectively 12 months from today, say. And then you're probably going to work that album for a minimum of 12 months after that. So that 2-year period, this 2 years is quite critical because this will define the rest of your career potentially. So let's start with that 12-month plan leading up to putting the thing out. So what do we do right now today? So we've got 12 months to think about this. What should we do today? So we're going to start thinking like a big band. What big bands do is they compartmentalise their activities and their thinking into blocks of time. So we're going to do that, and the first thing we're going to do is put some foundations in place so we can hang the rest of the campaign on it. So the first thing we probably need is a release date. So let's put that, it can always move, but let's put it in the calendar, and let's choose our release date carefully. And here's some things to think about for your release date. One, most serious commercial recordings get released on the Friday because it works with the charts. Number two, we're going to have press as part of this campaign and PR. So we've got to make it a little bit easier then. So it's worth thinking about some key times in the annual calendar where your record will have more chance of being noticed or less chance if you get caught up in all the noise. And generally it's about festivals. So a lot of festival bills are announced early March, for example. So it may be better to release your record in the beginning of April, for example. May is a good month as well because it's a good month for new releases because the festival season hasn't quite got going. And then we're going to forget about the summer. The next viable point to release is probably September, when it all starts to calm down and all the online magazines, the traditional print, everyone starts to have a little bit more headspace to talk about other stuff, new music, for example. Then we've got the run up to Christmas, so there's time to put something out in October, which is traditionally quite a strong month for new music. Then Christmas gets super busy, you'll get caught up in all the noise. New Year is a great time for a new band because it's when your fan base can be mobilised to make the biggest effect in a time when otherwise there's not that much going on. So there's no fixed rules here. It may be that you coordinate a release because you are on a festival, for example. So, you know, we will be flexible with this stuff, but that's just some general considerations to get this right. So stick it in the diary. What else do we need to plan? So we've set a release date, and then I think that a healthy thing to do at this stage is to brainstorm and have all the component parts of a campaign on at least on a bit of paper, and then you can start thinking about what you've got to do and who's going to help you with it and all the various roles to make this thing happen. We're going to be brainstorming stuff like press, PR, radio pluggers, obviously the songwriting, which we'll come back to. We're going to talk about videos, recording, production, booking a studio, budgeting it, how we're going to fund this stuff, The vision for the record is probably the most important thing at this stage. So song titles, album title, artwork. So if we've got a release date, we've got a great album title, then we're starting to think about some live shows and a campaign. The thing's starting to take shape already. So that's something you can do this week. Okay, so we also now have to start thinking about social media, because you know I said before that your band and campaign is like this heater and this plug. Well, you need to plug this album, this release, this campaign into something, into a scene, so it actually reaches people, you actually sell some records. It actually makes a difference. Now, the scene that you're going to be plugging into, if you're a grassroots band, you can't walk on the stage at Reading because you're not ready to do that yet. So the scene is going to be the one that you create, and you're probably going to do that through your social media. And from this small acorn, mighty oaks will grow. And that's what we're going to do to then develop the band as the album has a longer life and we increase that audience. So having put together a rough plan, again, think like a big band. Now's the time to really dedicate yourself to the songwriting and the creation of the best possible album. This is what bands mostly fail on because they don't put the time in. And they don't push themselves hard enough to really compete. And at this stage, and for what you guys want to achieve, good isn't good enough. It's got to be awesome and truly great. So you've got to do whatever it takes to get the best possible songs, and that investment will stand you for the rest of your life if you get this right. There's now going to be 3 or 4 months of very intense creative activity, generating song titles, feels, groove, doing co-writes. You might have to write 50 plus songs to come up with 8 or 9 that you're really happy with, that are at the right level. So whatever it takes, that's what you're going to do. And don't underestimate the power of co-writing to take your songs to another level. Okay, so having collected a bunch of songs that you're really happy with, before we leave the songwriting process and move on to producing and getting this record made, pay attention to the lyrics, the subject matter and the title of the album, because those are going to be very, very important in connecting you with your audience. The stronger the titles, the stronger the sense of direction and your vision, the stronger the record is going to be. So now we're about 4 or 5 months in. The next choices are, and the next thing to start planning is the producer and the studio. And we're going to talk about that next week. But I would also encourage you at this stage to be ambitious. Try and find a producer who's had recent success and made records that have really done the job. Because A, you'll learn a lot from someone like that, and B, it'll help the story and the vibe around the album. It can be more affordable than you think. Okay, so we've got songs together, we've got the producer, we've got the studio, we've got the artwork, we've got the title. So now we have to start thinking about the practical nitty-gritty. So here's some things to have on your checklist. So now is the time to have a fairly well-formed campaign. And this job of coordinating stuff is really important, because for a band to go up the next rung of the ladder, or even 2 or 3 rungs, and actually develop their career, lots of things need to happen at once. It's not generally enough just to do a support tour, even if it's with a massive band. It only works, or it only seems to work, if you've got press, PR, radio, socials, live, everything happening at once. That's what works. So to coordinate all this stuff requires a little bit of strategy. So maybe at this point that you're buying a little bit of help from the management point of view. So now we've got the songs, we've got the right producer, we've got the right studio, and we're in there recording, and it's in the background. Now it's time to construct a campaign. The reason it's important to have a campaign is this is how big bands become big bands, by doing things in a way that's coordinated. Because here's our artist. For this artist to take a step up the career ladder, then it's not enough to be on tour with a big band. It's not enough to be on the radio. It's not enough to have some press and PR going on. It's not enough to have your socials happening. But if you get everything happening at once, then that's what jumps you up the ladder. So coordinating all this is the job of the manager. So that's either you getting your management chops together and doing it from a DIY point of view. But if it all gets a bit much, perhaps it's time to buy in the services of a management consultant. Or you may be lucky enough to have attracted the attention from a more established management company. The choice is kind of yours. So if it's feeling like you're at the stage where you need a little bit of help with your management or your management strategy, refer back to our previous video. Know when to contact these managers. So now we're about 8 months in to our 12 months and things are getting a little bit serious. You've got an album well on the way, you've got a campaign strategy, you've either taken responsibility to manage this yourself or you've brought in a little bit of expertise to help you with a management consultant. Probably time to be thinking about press, PR and live shows. So it's going to be a very busy time for you. You've got all the album coming in, but you've got to stay on top of this stuff. So it's important to realise you don't need to hire a press company on a retainer for 6 months. This might be a very short 2-week campaign. It could cost you as little as 250 quid and could make a massive difference to everybody hearing about this campaign and giving it a little bit of muscle and a little bit of buzz. So on the live side of things, we now need some key shows. Looking ahead for when this album's out, we need some key shows to hang our live activity on. The hardest thing here, it's very much like chicken and the egg. The hardest thing is to get one important event, whether it's an appearance on a new band stage or it's a support slot. And if you can't get that, which will be many of you, because we're all fighting for those support slots, then you're going to have to put your own gig on and perhaps bring in other people. You need to have a substantial live show with a bit of a story so we can start to hang the rest of the campaign on it. And in an ideal world, we've actually got a showcase, a big gig, and a little tour to back that up. Then we can be really confident putting this record out. So 2 or 3 months ahead of the release, just review that release date, make sure it still makes sense. Have you managed to put those gigs in there? Have you got all the infrastructure in terms of management, press and PR happening? Playlisting, all that stuff. Have you got everything in place? If there's any doubt, delay it, keep putting singles out. There's no rush to do that. Much better to do a good job than do a rush job and get it wrong. But assuming everything's fine, what a lot of bands do is they release the first single almost for new bands. This is almost like a little bit of a sacrifice. It's something to get the buzz going, but you manage your own expectations. You know it's going to be unlikely to be a huge runaway success out the box because you haven't had time to generate enough audience, but you've got to start somewhere. So that first release is going to be really important. It's important that it's great and it doesn't matter if it's only seen by a few people. Okay, so first single's out. We've got 2 or 3 months before the album's out, and now's the time to really ramp up the excitement on social medias. Maybe you're going to have a launch party, maybe you're going to be running competitions. You're really going to be ramping up the activity, doing as many interviews as possible, preparing for the show and just generally getting your audience fired up. 3 weeks ahead of the release, everything needs to be locked down. Your press and PR people should be working hard to secure as many interviews as possible. And also, if the artist and the band are really on it, you should be following up all questions, all queries. Everyone, all hands to the pump at this stage because this is the most important time. Okay, so now it comes up to release time. Album comes out. Now, where it comes out is up to you. As part of your campaign, you may have organised a digital distribution platform. It's very easy to do. You may just be selling it from your website. That's kind of down to you. So long as your audience know where to get it, then that's cool. You may even done a traditional record deal as well, of course. Here's some final little checks to make sure that you've not forgotten any of the details. So there's the bones of a fairly traditional but innovative and modern album campaign. People are changing the way they distribute and sell their music all the time. So I would stress this is quite a traditional approach. And it may be that you can do something more inventive. I think the main point here is if you are going to go to the expense and spend all the time recording an album, we've got to be really clear why we're doing that and what job we hope to do by recording and selling an album. If there's any doubt, my advice is just to keep pumping those singles out, make them amazing. Quality will always be more important than quantity. So let's bear that in mind. All the time, you haven't recorded an album, you're a new band, so there's a real logic to squeezing the most of that kind of time in your life as a band and getting the most out of it. So good luck with recording your first album, whenever that may be. Stay tuned for further tips to develop your music career with WaterBear. And if you've got any specific questions and need any specific help, put it in the comments and we'll answer as best we can and help you take you from where you are now to where you want to be. So thank you for listening. I'm Bruce from WaterBear. Like and subscribe. We'll keep you in the loop. We do these type of music business advice videos. They come out every Tuesday. And if, of course, you want to do this type of work all the time, you can come and study with us and do a BA Honours degree or a Master's qualification, either online or on site in the heart of Brighton.